Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is Mojo. Do you know what Mojo really is? Well, let me tell you. Walking on Broadway, a friend slapped me on the back and exclaimed, "Israel is getting its mojo back." I understood the meaning from the context that they were complimenting Israel and considering the gargantuan amount of criticism heaped on Israel on a regular basis these days, criticism nearly everywhere. I took this as a welcome and appreciated blessing. Obviously, they were referring to the spectacular retaliatory strike on Iran, the self-defense strike on Iran. They also must have been thinking about the remarkable multi-pronged targeting of Hezbollah leadership via pagers and then walkie-talkies. They were probably also referencing the assassinations and targeting of Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iranian leadership. So Mojo must mean impressive successes. Yes, it does, but it's much more. When a team gets back its mojo or loses its mojo, it's the magic that is back or lost. If that is the case, then my Broadway friend is 100% correct and Team Israel is getting its mojo back. The word mojo has its roots in folk religion from the slave culture in the United States. Slaves were brought to the United States from Africa, where they practiced a folk religion known as hoodoo. It was prevalent in the slave culture, and people who practiced it were called root workers or conjure doctors or root doctors. They cast spells using roots and honey and other things. The roots and other objects were given to people. They were talisman, amulets, and spells that were to protect people. The spells and the talisman, the objects were the mojos. The word has taken on an entirely different meaning today, without the root or the object. The abolitionist former slave Frederick Douglass mentions the importance of his mojo in his autobiography. The story is powerful. Frederick Douglass sought help from a hoodoo root doctor named Sandy Jenkins. Frederick Douglass wanted protection from a cruel and brutal slave breaker named Mr. Covey, whose job was to break slaves, forcing them into conformity. The root doctor had Frederick Douglass follow him into the woods. They found the root, and Sandy Jenkins told Frederick Douglass to keep the root on his right side at all times, and it would protect him from being whipped. Frederick Douglass returned to his plantation, to the original plantation, and the brutal Mr. Covey ordered him to do some work. Frederick Douglass, the freed slave, stood his ground as a free man and refused. They fought. Frederick Douglass prevailed. After the fight, Mr. Covey never bothered Frederick Douglass again. Douglass was convinced that it was the mojo root that protected him from the evil, brutal slave breaker. Strength, especially perceived strength, is one of the most critical characteristics of defense in the Middle East. Once, Israel had a reputation as being virtually superhuman and undefeatable. The Six-Day War, the raid on Entebbe, the bombing of the Iraqi nuclear plant, the Stuxnet virus, and the IDF's array of high-tech and computer weapons. This reputation was an essential form of Israel's defense. It was a disincentive for Israel's enemies to attack. The brutal, gut-wrenching massacre of October 7th diminished Israel's reputation. Its deterrence took a serious hit. The newly weakened perception of the Jewish state put Israel's safety at high risk. After October 7th massacre, the Arabic and Iranian media were full of leaders, commentators, and analysts shouting that Israel is no longer the country it once was. Israel is weak, a house of cards, easy to destroy. They preached that Israel can be defeated. Arab commentators repeatedly broadcast messages saying how easy it was to inflict deep and serious damage to Israel. And look how much damage was inflicted by low-tech weapons. Look how the Jews cower in fear. We saw it in Arabic news, we saw it in the Persian news, in the Iranian news. Yes, Israel is getting their mojo back. It's not just about power and prowess. It's about reinstilling deterrence. This is why these operations and their miraculous successes are so important to broadcast in the world media. That the enemies of Israel should be quaking at the lengths to which Israel can and will go to achieve its objectives. Even in Iran, where the leadership and the official media downplayed the successes of Israel's attack, local Iranians learned the truth. They learned how devastating the attacks were, how precise Israel's retaliation was. A mission so successful that 150 or so fighter jets, flying 1,500 kilometers in each direction, launching hundreds, if not 1,000 rockets, and only 5 Iranians were killed, 4 soldiers and 1 civilian. That's called Mojo. Coming up next, Points of View. First column up is a column from Ynet. It was published on November 1st, 2024. It's authored by Jennifer Teal. It's entitled, Russia Military Collaboration with Iran Threatens Western Security. And it's subtitled, it's a long subtitle. Analysis, Russia and Iran deepen military ties amid Ukraine war, with Russia supplying Iran advanced tech and arms cash, while Tehran aids Moscow's war effort. Alliance could further empower regional proxies and draw in additional military partners. Why Not gives a subtitle that encapsulates the entire column. This is how Teal begins. For many years, Russia has striven to keep its distance from events in the Middle East, but the new post-October 7th reality has made this even more difficult than ever to achieve. Indeed, since 2022, Russia's defense relationship with Iran had already taken a big leap forward. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine led Moscow to seek warmer relations with Iran, especially in military partnerships, which has caused serious concern for the United States and Israel. Russia is not only actively assisting Iran in hardening its defenses against future strikes, it is also providing Tehran with advanced military technologies and cash from arms sales, further enabling the mullahs to sow discord and violence across the region and beyond. Cooperation has now moved past the previous patron-client dynamic, with Iran emerging as a key enabler of Russia's air and ground campaign in Ukraine. Now Teal begins to conclude, and she explains that the Western world must disrupt the relationship between Iran and Russia. It's the only way to stop this situation. She writes, as a result, the best the West can do is to disrupt the cooperation between Iran and Russia on the margins and focus on undermining it in sensitive areas alongside sanctioning. Specifically, focusing can be directed towards complicating Iran and Russia's procurement of electronics for high-end defense goods and seeking to derail impending deals through strategic diplomatic disclosures. Now, Teal concludes by giving some real suggestions on how to stop this. She writes, potential obstacles to cooperation will also continue going forward, such as both countries' supply chain vulnerabilities, Russia's desire not to antagonize its Gulf Arab partners, and Russia's enduring technological superiority vis-a-vis Iran in key areas. All these preclude the formation of a full-fledged and equal military strategic partnership. And yet, the defense relationship between Iran and Russia is on a clear upward trajectory, which the West should be mindful of. I must say, that is, as much as I follow this material, this essay is very scary. It's a new reality. Coming up next, a column from Tatiana Weisberg, and it was published in the Jerusalem Post on November 3rd. It is entitled, Retaliation is Not Self-Defense. Why does this matter? Opinion, subtitled, The idea of retaliation is inconsistent with the inherent right to use of force in response to an armed attack. In other words, I would say self-defense. Weisberg begins by explaining the law. Actually, the entire piece explains the law, international law. This is so important because most people do not know or understand the law, whether they be commentators or politicians. She writes, following the Israel strikes on Iran on October 26th, many media outlets reported it as a retaliation. In the following days, it was reported that the Iranian foreign minister stated that Iran is entitled to the right of self-defense. This kind of narrative not only deprives international law of its principles and content, but also strengthens the anti-Israel bias. From the legal point of view, there is a crucial difference between the two concepts. The latter indicates a lawful response. The formal means a violation of international law. In fact, the correct description of events is the opposite. Israel responded legally by using force against Iran due to an illegal armed attack against it, in accordance with the rules of Article 51 of the UN Charter. Now Weisberg explains Article 51 of the UN Charter and provides for self-defense and the use of force. She actually quotes from the Charter itself. Quote, while the prohibition of the use of force is one of the principles of the Charter, it allows only a single exception, the natural right of self-defense. Chapter 7, which deals with threats and breaches of international peace and security, regulates the right of self-defense in Article 51. Nothing in the present Charter shall impair the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense if an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations until the Security Council has taken measures necessary to maintain international peace and security, unquote. Weisberg now explains that self-defense even included preemptive strikes, attacking first, knowing that you will soon be targeted. She writes, the law refers to self-defense even against an armed attack that has not yet been committed, if it can be proven that such an attack is about to occur. However, when the armed attack has already taken place, there is no dispute regarding the right of the attacked country to self-defense. The failure to distinguish retaliation from self-defense means blurring the line between who is the aggressor and who is the victim. It may have pervasive effects, benefiting the access of resistance narrative. In addition, Iran has been constantly resorting to a language of international law in a manipulative manner. Weisberg now concludes, saying that Israel is correct and Iran is not just wrong, but so very, very wrong. She writes, Israel in turn tends to ignore these kinds of arguments, which indeed misuse of the law. Yet a cynical Iranian attempt to invert the rules of the UN Charter impacts global public opinion. No matter how absurd the Iranian arguments are, Israel shall be less apathetic. To claim retaliation or self-defense does not make a lot of difference, even intuitively, which makes the arena of international law another front to fight on. Thank you, Tatiana Weisberg. An excellent, insightful article and elucidating. Thank you very much. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I'm going to show you 6 cartoons in one headline today. Sorry, no memes today. First up is a spectacular depiction of a terrorist Hamas or Hezbollah terrorist using babies as human shields, and a UN person feeding them with a baby bottle. So true, so absurd, and so sad, all at the same time. Second cartoon is very biting, using the UN, which is also a dove in this case, the letters UN, and the Israeli flag strangling and destroying both the UN and the dove of peace. The cartoon is entitled Israel to Ban UN Refugee War Dove. Next up is the third and fourth cartoons together have a very similar theme and a very similar structure. An Israeli soldier stands on a huge pile of civilian dead. He holds up a target with 2 shots in it. He proclaims, "We've hit the enemy." The idea is that so many civilians have died to hit 1 or 2 people. That is almost exactly the same depiction in the next cartoon, only this one has Yahya Sinwar in the pile as the target. And the title of the cartoon is A Year of Manhunt. France. It was published in France. Because it literally took a year to find Sinwar. And it's now been broadcast that the IDF has confirmed 5 times that the IDF just missed Sinwar by just literally mere minutes. This next cartoon is entitled Growing Hate, An Israeli tank is watering a pile of destruction, and the flowers that come out of it read the word hate. The message is clear. The cartoonist thinks that Israel's actions are causing and generating the hatred towards Israel and towards Jews. This last cartoon is entitled Israel, War, Middle East, Tank Spread, Gaza, Iran. It was published in London. The cartoonist is telling us that the Israel's war machine is moving all over, from Gaza to Iran to Lebanon to Syria. And finally, this last item is a headline from the New York Times. If it was not true and sad, it would be hilarious. The headline reads, devices with free Gaza messages found at ballot box fires. The police said that they had not determined the motive for the arson fires in Portland, Oregon and Vancouver, Washington. But the messages have heightened the sensitivity of the investigation. Actually, I must say, the police have not called it a hate crime, nor have they yet to call in the FBI. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and his account on X was banned for hateful speech recently when it threatened Israel. And then I look and I see the account, which is in Hebrew, was shuttered, but now it's open again. Yet Iran's supreme leader once again is tweeting again in Hebrew and again threatening the United States and Israel. The Hebrew was not from Google Translate. Actually, it was better than that. The Hebrew is decent, but simple and rudimentary. This is the translation of the text of his X message on his tweet. The U.S. and the Zionist regime will receive a crushing response for what they are doing against Iran and the resistance front. It's all right there on X, right there. Anti-Israel activists stole statues of Israel's first president, Dr. Chaim Weizmann, from Manchester University, marking the 107th years since the Balfour Declaration, which Weizmann helped secure. The group Palestine Action claimed responsibility, posting footage of the act on X and stating that Weizmann secured the Balfour Declaration, a British pledge written 107 years ago, which began the ethnic cleansing of Palestine by signing the land away. That's a quote. British police have launched an investigation. The Balfour Declaration was a 1917 statement of British Foreign Minister, Secretary Arthur James Balfour, expressing support for, quote, the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, unquote, marking a key moment in the international endorsement of the Jewish aspirations for a homeland, the Zionist state, Israel. Israel nearly captured Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar at least 5 times before he was killed. It was reported in London-based Arabic daily Ashraq al-Awsat, citing Hamas sources. The sources claim Sinwar sent a message to his family informing them of the death and burial site of his nephew, Ibrahim Mohammed Sinwar, who had been accompanying him. The message reportedly reached the family 2 days after Sinwar's death. Despite renewed negotiations and efforts, Israeli officials expressed significant pessimism about the chances of securing a hostage deal with Hamas. Quote, Hamas insists on a complete end to the war, and it is not open to incremental deals. This isn't moving in a promising direction, unquote, a senior Israeli official said, adding that mediators have not returned with an official response, attempting to prevent a full collapse of the talks. This is what they said. Perhaps after the U.S. elections, there could be a fresh approach. Arab media outlets have cited channels linked to Hezbollah reporting that an Israeli commando naval force landed on the shores of Batroun, which is in northern Lebanon, about 87 miles from the border. They captured Imad Fadel Amachaz, a senior figure in the terrorist organization of Hezbollah, from a cabin in the area. Reports claim this operation was executed with some coordination with UNIFIL, which is the United Nations Interim Forces in Lebanon, and involved more than 25 people. The man captured was a high-ranking Hezbollah officer involved in smuggling weapons to Hezbollah from Syria via the sea. This was reported by the Saudi media network Al Hadath. A source close to the Israeli leadership told the Washington Post that, quote, current intelligence indicates that Iran is planning to attack Israel in the coming days, unquote. His remarks were made against the backdrop of Tehran's threats to respond to last month's Israeli strike on Iranian territory. Meanwhile, the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said, quote, we will not leave any attack against our sovereignty unanswered. Israel knows that if it makes a mistake, it will face a severe response. In addition, Pezeshkian said that if Israel reconsiders its behavior by accepting a ceasefire and stopping the killing of innocents in the area, this may affect the type of intensity of the attack. Finally, American Airlines will not fly to Israel again until the end of the summer of 2025. The airline has previously canceled its flights until the end of March 2025. Now it's the end of the summer, the end of August, and has now extended the cancellations until August 2025 at least. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. This letter I'm about to read is from a reserve soldier in the Golani Brigade. It's an elite brigade in the IDF. His name is Mayan Nabozny. It is very intense. I do not agree with everything he says. Neither do I agree with the way he says everything. However, it's very passionate, and the ideas represent many, many reserve soldiers. Here is the note. It's a little long. It's about 4 minutes, but it is also very important to hear and to understand. Here it goes. Thoughts of a reserve soldier completing about 260 days of reserve duty in 3 tours since the beginning of the war, in the north, in Gaza, and now in Lebanon. Don't let them fool us. We are winning. Since we were young soldiers in Golani, we have been prepared and trained for the difficult and brutal war in Lebanon. There were many statements like Hezbollah is a different story than Gaza, or Hezbollah is a guerrilla army, not just a terror organization. These made us prepare for the worst. After a month of operational activity in villages near the border in Lebanon, we discovered that thanks to the amazing work of the IDF, in recent months, in terms of intelligence gathering and advanced offensive operations like the Beepers and the Air Force, we are facing a weak, cowardly enemy that only tries to avoid contact with us because we are tearing them apart. Everywhere we went, we eliminate them, destroying all of the infrastructure they built over years and all the weapons they've amassed, leaving the villages that have become Hezbollah's strongholds in ruins. The operational work is conducted offensively with determination and overwhelming firepower. The cooperation among the various forces, just like an orchestra that knows how to play together. I don't live in euphoria. Indeed, the war is hard, and there are many casualties. Every name that is released for publication breaks the heart, but we must not be confused or weakened. For them, and in light of their spirit, we must continue forward, pursue and eliminate all of our enemies. The media is so weakened. It focuses primarily on loss and pain, on slander and debilitating politics. What about victory? Why don't you show how the IDF initiates offensives and wins? Strengthen the people, lift their heads and spirits. At the beginning of the war, everyone hung signs saying, "We will win." Today, I feel we need to move to "We are winning," and big time. The next section is called The Quest of Policy. Tasks assigned to fighting forces will be carried out to the best of their ability, and they will win in battle. But there needs to be a policy that leads to complete victory. We are completely destroying Hezbollah's plan to conquer the Galilee. However, if there isn't a policy to preserve all the operational achievements, then in a few years, everything will revert to the way it was. We still have a way to go. Despite all the military achievements, they are still firing hundreds of rockets at us daily. And we cannot continue like this. We must deepen the achievement and do whatever it takes to restore the security of the State of Israel in general and the North in particular. As a resident of the North in the conflict zone that hasn't been evacuated, it is impossible to live under constant sirens, anxiety, with children afraid to leave their homes due to the situation. Decision makers, please be determined and strong. Lead us to complete victory. Reservists and their families, let's start from the end. When we are called, the vast majority of us come. We are here by privilege and virtue, long before duty, and we understand deeply the state of Israel is in a historic struggle for existence. When called to the flag, we stand ready. However, as a brigade that has done over 250 days of reserve duty since the beginning of the war, there are only a few such brigades on various fronts. We are already saying this is too much for us. It has become impossible. Businesses are closing, families are breaking apart, academic studies are being abandoned, and more. There must be more people who join us under this burden. And no, I'm not just talking about the ultra-Orthodox. Our ultra-Orthodox brothers need to be partners in the holy work of the IDF. But the way to do this is long, and it won't work by coercion. This isn't the place to elaborate. The IDF must quickly reestablish the reserve brigades and divisions that were disbanded over the years, and recruit those who are released without any reason from existing units along the way. This concerns about 40,000 eligible reservists aged 25 to 40 who need to be part of this campaign, and we need them. Additionally, the burden sharing among existing brigades must be done in a more balanced and proportional manner. Some brigades were called for 2 months, while others have been only on duty for 8 months since the beginning of the war. We are here and we show up when needed, and it is a great privilege, but we and our families cannot sustain this for long. And let's end with 2 moments that strengthen me. First, right after we were called up on the eve of Rosh Hashanah for maneuvers in Lebanon, we are organizing, preparing for departure, etc. On the first morning of Rosh Hashanah, I find myself on a bus heading to the firing range to calibrate weapons with an ultra-Orthodox driver wearing a large black kippah and a beard. One of the holiest days of the Jewish people, and here's a moment where all shades of the rainbow of our wonderful nation are here together despite all the disagreements. We put everything aside and are determined to win together. The second, last night we had a company evening to conclude our deployment. Karaoke, friends, and a lot of joy. At the beginning of the evening, an elderly couple entered the back of the hall and sat quietly in the corner as bystanders. A bit strange, after a brief inquiry, it turns out that they are Yafa and Eyal El-Kayam, who had been evacuated from Metula for a year. We just want to see the soldiers rejoicing. We have no words to thank you, they tell us. We, with tears in our eyes, draw strength from them and pray that we succeed as part of the fighting force to finally bring them back home. The special meeting concluded with a joint karaoke song, Ein Od Milvado, by Shlomi Shabbat, at the request of the dear El-Kayam family. What amazing people, what a nobility of spirit. This is the spirit that wins. Am Yisrael, lift your heads. It hurts, it's hard, and it requires patience and resilience. But we are winning. Yes, we are winning. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.